Hi, today I'm here with Christina Wallace, senior lecturer at Harvard Business School and co-host of the Limit Does Not Exist podcast. How are you doing
Thanks
today,
for having
Christina?
me. I'm so excited to be here.
Hey, my pleasure. Can you kick us off with a little bit about your background and how'd you end up a lecturer at Harvard?
Sure. So I describe myself as a human Venn diagram who has built a career at the intersection of business, technology, and the arts. I was that girl growing up who never wanted to focus. I didn't want to choose kind of which path to go down. I double majored in math and theater with minors in music, physics, and political science, and have loved kind of straddling multiple worlds at once. And so I have built a career that let me do that. And I think one of the pieces of advice I like to share the most with boys and girls as they're growing up is you don't have to choose. You can create a career that kind of lets you be all the things that you want to be. It might be a little more challenging than doing something super straightforward, but I think it's so much more fun.
Oh, that's so interesting. Because my view is always like you got to find what you're passionate about so that way you don't get exhausted and burnt out. But you actually have something I wanted to hear when I was young that you could do it all.
I mean, you can't be a dilettante about it, right? You can't start a new hobby every 3 days and then leave something before you ever finish it. But with discipline, you can still have a range of interests and find where they intersect. So often in any group, I'm sort of the odd woman out. In a theater room, I'm the one who loves math and Excel. In a math room, I'm the one telling jokes and doing comedy improv. In any sort of group, I bring what's not there. And so that's what I think has crafted a career for me that that has worked really well, that I can sort of be an entrepreneur. I can be a professor. I can be an author and a podcaster and a storyteller and kind of pull all these pieces together in what I call a portfolio career rather than a linear one.
That's interesting because you could almost bring different skills from one discipline to the other.
Absolutely. And I think when I started the Limit Does Not Exist podcast with my co-host 𝐂𝐴𝐺𝐿, I thought I was the only one that was kind of this weird double major, left brain, right brain, intersection. And when I met Kate, she was an actress in Hollywood who also tutored girls in math and had a nonprofit focused on girls in math on the side. And I thought, oh, okay, there's at least two of us. And so we started the show to find other people like us who sit at those really unexpected intersections. And it turns out they're everywhere. We talked to physicists who play jazz saxophone and dancers who like to work with robots. I mean, truly, there are so many sides to most people. And I think when we're children, that's totally normal and accepted that you can be the kid who loves chess and drama. And as we grow up, we sort of kind of hide off pieces of ourselves. We narrow in and we focus, and in some ways that's important. I want a neurosurgeon to be really good at neurosurgery, and that's important in certain fields for specialization. But for the most part, I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of keep other things in our lives, and not just as hobbies, find ways to pull them into our careers as well.
Christina, I'm getting a lot of clipping on the.
On my earrings. Let me take these out.
Oh, maybe that's what it is.
There we go.
Let's see.
Can't be fashionable and also have good sound.
It's still.
Is that better?
I wonder where it's coming from.
There was some noise. Apparently something happened in my living room just now, but
Oh yeah, that's okay. That's a. I get that's normal. Okay, I think it's okay.
Okay.
I think you're right. Maybe we'll try it.
I can also hold it out.
Yeah, I hate being the production guy.
No. I better than that than having a whole episode where you're like, what is that sound?
I had one that like that. It was we started an online school and the guy did the whole course and it was a bad mic. We found out. All right, well, let's get into it. What are some of your top principles for attributing to your success?
So I love this question. I had a hard time narrowing it down, but I think for me, it comes down to three ideas. One that comes more naturally to me, and two that I had to work really hard to get comfortable with. And I sum them up as fail, brag, pivot. So bragging sometimes has a bit of a negative connotation to it. I think of it as just being able to tell your story, particularly if you're someone like me who does a lot of different things. On the surface, you look at my LinkedIn or my resume, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I have to help other people understand how what I do fits together, why they might want to work with me, what I could bring to something. And that requires me to be out there telling my story. So that one is the one that came a little more natural to me as an actress and a storyteller, finding the narrative and making sure that my friends and my professional network, they know what I'm up to, what are my wins, what are my wants, right? Like, you can't hide in the corner and hope your work will get noticed. No one cares about your career as much as you do. So you have to be willing to share it. And I think especially girls and young women are often socialized to not talk about themselves. And I would like to gently encourage young girls and young women to really reverse that trend and be confident sharing what they're working on and what they care about. The other two, fail and pivot, those are the ones that took a little bit of time for me to learn to do well. I was socialized as a high achieving, type A, straight A student who did everything exceptionally. And what started out when I was quite young as just being good at school or being good at music, at math, created this identity of being excellent. And it made me afraid to try things that I wasn't sure I would be excellent at. So as I got into high school and college, I think I shied away from trying new things if I wasn't absolutely confident I would be the best. And it wasn't until really I started a company and it failed, like flat on my face. The companies that went out of business, I lost investor money. It was a pretty public failure that I realized that A, you can learn a lot from failing, and B, it's not this big black mark. It doesn't make you a bad person. It's not a moral failing. I mean, unless you're out there swindling people or doing something, truly bad. If it's just you tried and it didn't work, that's okay. And I think there's something very American about that, but it is something that I think is not nearly as scary as a lot of young girls and women think. The last one on pivot is sort of related to that failure idea. It's you can change your mind. And importantly, when you get new information, you should change your mind, right? So if you're trying something and it's not working, it's okay. Sunk costs, aside, forget about them. Like, try something else, go in a different direction and see if that's any better. And what I love about this idea of pivoting is when you're feeling lost, when you don't know what to do, I think high achieving girls and women might sit still and think really hard, right? You make your pro and con list, you try to work it through and strategize and maybe get lots of input, but you still are stuck with, I don't know what to do. And the freedom of knowing you can pivot is just go try one of the directions and see what you learn. And if it doesn't work, change direction, right? Like, if you take action, you'll have more information than if you sit in your room and you think really hard and you make lists and you talk to yourself. So don't be afraid of trying and then redirecting once you know a little bit more. And those are basically my 3 rules: fail, brag, pivot.
I like pivot the way you position it, because it's like essentially an alternative to giving up.
Absolutely.
Look at a different angle. Look at how you can change direction and keep going. So
and it lowers the stakes, I think, right? If you have to be right, the stakes feel really high. But if you know you have permission to try something else, once you learn a little bit more, you've lowered the stakes to like, let's just see.
Now, this is where it gets fun. I'm going to challenge you to break these principles down into practical steps that somebody young listening to this can understand and sort of get into the mindset and think through how they would actually apply it in their daily life. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
We'll start with bragging, because I think that was a fun one you started off with. And I like that one because in this world, everybody's busy. And I always add that analogy that everybody's waiting for the phone to ring, but there's only a handful of people actually picking up the phone and making the dials. So what are you going to do to break the ice and the tension to get noticed? Because that's the only way you're going to move forward. So how would you take bragging and your approach into something practical that we could apply?
So I have a daughter. She is 17 months old. She's not talking yet. So this is purely a hypothesis based on when I was a child, not advice from my experience as a parent. But I remember coming home from school every day and my mom would ask me, how was your day? And I'd say, fine. And then I'd go in my room and shut the door and do my things. And I would never share what I was working on, where I might have like stumbled a little bit, or where I was challenged in maybe a friendship or had some issues. I just kept it all to myself. And I think one of the easiest, lowest stakes way to practice bragging is to talk to your parents about your day. And it feels very maybe silly to think that that's even bragging, but you know, when you've had a good day, something went well, like give it the full story. Don't just say I got an A on my test. Like give me the beats, right? Tell me the narrative. Did you come up on a question that you were totally not prepared for, but you remembered that moment from your study group and you're like, I got you. Like you thought you were going to trip me up and you didn't, right? Tell me the story about your day and get really good at sharing that and include in that story where you screwed up. Don't just make yourself the hero all the time. Like be human. Be three-dimensional and fallible, because I think that's one of the ways that bragging does become over the top and really annoying is if you're only talking about how great you are all the time, right? And that's where you're like, oh, okay, like humble bragging or regular straight up bragging, we all know those people on the internet and they're awful. So get used to being a three-dimensional character, right? Be a whole person and talk about what's good and what's not. And once you get comfortable doing it with your parents, like do it with your friends, do it with your teachers. Like you rock something, make sure you share it.
I like that a lot. As a leader, you have to be able to convey your vision, your goals. You got to put the energy into it to get other people excited about it. It's essentially a practice, like an exercise, to get that level of effort to be compassionate and share that message and story. So I think one is developing that, hey, here are some things that happened, and to put that excitement, tell the other part, the narrative, which is a whole skill of its own, to be able to articulate the story so people gravitate into it, they follow along, and they can walk with you in that journey that you just experienced.
Absolutely. I think if you get to the why, right? You don't just say the what or maybe the how, but you get to the why of the story. That's what gets people hooked. That's when they're on board and they want to see you succeed. So get all the way through to like, here's what's going on with me and why that matters, why it's awesome, why I struggled, why I'm really proud.
I like that a lot. That's a great approach to bragging in a good way. Failure. This is a good one too, because many people have a fear of failure. And I liked how you drive the fact that that's one of the best ways for you to learn. So let's break that down. How would somebody that's got this extreme fear of failure, and I've seen this continue through the ages, it's not just people that are young.
No.
You've got professionals that have been in their career for 20 plus years and their fear of failing and going and venturing out and doing a new business or something like that.
Absolutely. This is a muscle, which is the most exciting thing, I think. It's not an innate skill that you either, do or do not have. It's a muscle, and you can learn how to get comfortable failing. So when you're young, there's a lot of opportunities to fail. You have to opt into them though. Like go and join in with the kids on the basketball court. Even if you think you're terrible at basketball, go be the worst person on the team and be okay with that, right? Go try a club that you're like, I don't know anything about this, but why not? Go audition for the school play, even if you've never been on stage before. So finding ways to choose to say, I don't know if I'm good at it, but I'm interested. Let's see, right? It's a very low stakes way to get used to that failure muscle. But there are other ways too. So in particular, boys in heterosexual relationships are socialized to be the ones who ask girls out. And they get a lot of experience with rejection and failure. And girls don't. We are socialized to wait to be asked out. So as you're getting older, take the reins, go in and be the one asking out, get experience being turned down to your face or over text. It's super scary, I know, but get comfortable with that. There's also sales jobs. So my first job was selling shoes at Sears. And in a sales job, you'll learn pretty quickly, you're going to get a lot of no's and you get paid off of the yeses. So you got to keep trying. You learn to listen really well. You learn to understand and put yourself in the other people's shoes, and you learn to solve their problems. And those are all skills that you get better at over time. You make more money, right? It's like a direct reinforcing feedback loop. So there are ways through social skills, there are ways through early jobs that you can really build that failure muscle. Because once you fail a lot, you start realizing not to take it personally. I think that's the hardest part. When you don't fail often, it feels like a personal shortcoming. And when you get used to it, you realize, okay, so I didn't do it as perfect as I wanted to. What did I learn about that?
I love it. The way you describe it, it is a muscle. You get better at about it. It gets easier to overcome failure. I like the examples because the theme I picked up was essentially challenge yourself with the whole series of these unknown, uncomfortable scenarios that you wouldn't normally gravitate towards.
Mm-hmm.
And just do that in increments, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know, ask out the person that you wanted to, or something might be simple as just go talk to the doorman when you typically don't say hi to them.
Exactly.
Make a point to say hello, and then start with all these conversations you have with people you interact with. So I like that. It's sort of essentially think of it more as a series of little challenges that you can build up into.
I mean, if you think of it like a muscle, how do you build muscle? It's repetition and stress. You have to push yourself. You can't just lift the same weight over and over again. You gradually add weight. So start with the easier things. And then as those get more comfortable, keep pushing yourself into the more uncomfortable things and say, this is uncertain. I don't know the outcome. I'm going to try anyway.
That's a great perspective. It reminded me of myself because I used to be so shy and introverted. I remember the first thing I did, I thought I was going to get by easy by going to the techie networking events. And I learned because I was always the wallflower. Even then I found myself with anxiety, but slowly and surely I overcame it, got out, get into the middle of the room, stuck my hand out and said, hi, and sort of learned that first step. And then fast forward a number of years, speak in front of an audience, giving a talk. So you're right. I think challenge yourself in a progressively way, just like you exercise.
Absolutely.
Pivot.
So pivot is an interesting one. I think for some people, this won't be hard. Some people, I think, are very flexible with, you know, where they want to go. And maybe for them, the challenge is picking one thing and sticking with it, right? It's less about being flexible and more about pushing against the flailing of, I can do anything. You're like, can you just pick a major and graduate, you know? Yep. So certainly this isn't for everyone, but for people like me who had a very black and white kind of worldview, it was like, I'm either all in or I'm terrible. I'm either doing this or I'm not. I started on this path. I'm going to finish it. It's the permission and the practice of saying, does this still serve me? And if not, let's try something else. So here's an example. I was backpacking through Central America and I took a surfing lesson. And I am terrible at surfing. So practicing my failing left and right. But this surfing lesson was going on. It was about 2 hours long. I was about an hour in. I had smacked myself in the face with the surfboard. I had a bloody nose. I really wasn't having any fun. Like the teacher and I were just not gelling. And this girl came by who I had just run into the night before at my hostel. And she's like, I have a crazy idea. There's a bus leaving for Panama in like 45 minutes. Do you want to come with me for the weekend? And my immediate reaction was absolutely not. I've paid for this surfing lesson. I still have an hour to go. Like, I must finish it because this is the thing I decided to do. My grandmother raised me to be very committed to the things that I choose. And then I paused and said, I'm not having any fun. This is not a fit. This isn't working for me. It's not serving me anymore. And I decided to go crazy and say, yes, like, I'll meet you at the bus. Let's go do something else. So maybe this feels a little less tangible, but if you find yourself being that person who says, I'm going to finish this, whether or not it's any fun, I'm going to clean my plate, whether or not I'm enjoying the food I'm eating, I'm going to do that club all the way to the end, even if it's not working for me, I would say it's permission to reassess and go in a new direction. And I think you have to feel this one out for yourself. If you're someone who's hard and fast like me, this is advice for you. And if you're someone who's never finished a single book, maybe leave this one alone. Maybe work on commitment and less about the pivoting.
Yeah, I agree, because you're right. There's sort of a whole spectrum of some folks that constantly switch and they need to get better at just being committed and focused. And then you got the folks that have been in the same career for 20 years. And I've seen it where some industries, marketing is a good example, where it's actually good to switch because you'll be in new environments, learn new skills, and it's actually better for you in the long term. How do you get somebody that's in that position to think about that pivot? And really, that's a tough one because you did it, and I feel like you were challenged in a way where you sort of made a new friend, and they're like a lot of energy. Hey, come on, and you got challenged to rethink everything and hit a threshold where you eventually went a different direction.
Yeah.
I'm wondering for that person that is so steady, if there is something there that gets you over.
It often takes a catalyst, right? It's hard for someone, especially who isn't comfortable with that idea of pivoting, to self-identify and sort of be your own catalyst to make a change. And so my advice for that person is, who are you surrounding yourself by? Do you have people in your life that might challenge you or that might bring in fresh ideas? Or are you surrounded by the same 5 professional people that you've spent the last 10 or 20 years around, right? So what are ways that you're getting new ideas or being challenged or really looking at the world through different eyes? I think this world, especially in the last year, but even true before that, it's becoming so dynamic. It's changing so fast that the things we're going to do 10 years from now didn't exist 10 years ago. And if you are someone who's like rigid in your thinking, I committed to this, this is the path I'm on, that's the direction I'm going, I don't think you're going to be well served by that mindset in this world. I think it requires flexibility and dynamism and that always learning mindset.
I like that. Your environment and influences come and play with that as well, and to pay attention to it. I got to ask, how'd you get so good at communication, speaking abilities?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I spent a lot of time reading books as a child. I didn't have many friends, but me and Nancy Drew spent a lot of hours together. And then when I got to college, I was a theater major and spent a fair amount of time on a stage looking out at a live audience who either does or does not laugh when you tell that joke. You get a chance to really refine with regular feedback what that performance feels like. And then, post theater, I found an opportunity as a public speaker and a podcaster that storytelling is really valuable in the business world, and not everyone can do it well. And so that was my kind of, my new thing that I could bring into any room to say, hey, I'll do the presentation. I'll get up on the stage and do the talk. Like, sure, put me in, coach.
Okay. These are great tips.
It's just a lot of training.
I 100% agree with you. I myself started taking acting classes only a few years ago to help develop these skills. And I think these could be developed earlier. So those of you listening, reading, and I've noticed that definitely helps expand your vocabulary, naturally helps you speak better. and then anything performance, right? Theater, acting, comedy, and then the storytelling component falls within it, which I think is another skill of its own, that if you can understand the science of storytelling, that would fall in trait. So 100% agree. Those are things to just challenge yourself and learn early.
Improv comedy, if I could recommend one class to take, one hobby to pick up as a young person, like improv comedy, it is such an incredible way to learn to listen to your other improvisers. You have to listen so carefully. You can't just show up with what you want to do on stage. It's about co-creating, and you're listening to your audience. You're staying present in the moment, and you're reacting in real time. And together, you're making something that didn't exist before, which is terrifying in the moment and really fulfilling afterward. And I think like that environment, I mean, to this day, it is the most terrifying of all the things that I can do as a performer, but I feel like it gives me so many skills. I
like it. How do you keep your energy on 10? Because you project energy, I pick up.
I do. I don't know. I consider myself an introvert. I do. I will finish this and then I will need to go and like sit in silence for 10 minutes to just like recoup all of the energy I just went through. I think I spent a lot of time around people who don't project energy. When I was younger, it was just like dead silence. And you're kind of like, gotta give me something, dude, something, please. And I realized how awful that was on the receiving end. And so I just learned to give, I guess, in hopes that people would give back to me.
It's almost like you built that as muscle yourself of projecting energy.
I think so.
Hey, Christina, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
This was great. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
And of course. I'm excited to see this. I'm sorry the sound was funky in the beginning. I hope your amazing editors can...
Ashton, if you're listening to this, all you're... No, we'll clean up, and I think they just made their little launch plan for this, so hopefully we get this out soon. And
awesome.
And
well, thank you. Yeah, let me know when it's live. I'll blast it out to all my socials.
Awesome. What do you think would be good? So my other podcast, I have a nice signature question at the end, and it's like, it used to be, what's the craziest shit you've seen in M&A? And then marketing told me not to swear anymore. So what's the craziest thing you've seen in M&A? And then this is the idea with BossMove. I'm hoping, because one of the cool things we do with the other podcast is like why I like to get in the tactical step-by-steps. We actually extract that and we build like this little library and attribute it.
I love that.
Where it's like, hey, here's a library of M&A techniques, because we get into these like big finance stuff. But here it'd be cool to do it like, here's like some little moves, and then, hey, we can put a quote in there from you or something like that, and build a similar library, especially for somebody younger, like a high school or a college kid. But I was wondering what might be a fun, like little, building on that theme, like a last question of, I don't know, something that sticks out, like, what's that one leadership advice you have? Or
I mean, everyone always ends it with like, surround yourself by good people. I would love something like, what's the best mistake you've ever made?
Ooh, I like that.
Something that they don't get asked in every interview, that they don't have a pat, really like topical, blah, 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 like tweetable answer to, something that requires them to really think.
What's the best mistake you made?
What's the best mistake you've ever made?
You got a minute? Can I ask you that? What's the best mistake you've ever made?
Oh, I brought this on myself. The best mistake I've ever made.
That's the best mistake right there. Just
I know. Well, there it is. No, I think this is it. My second year of business school, I wanted to take this class that was oversubscribed. It was in the education social enterprise module. And I begged and I pleaded and they wouldn't let me in. And by the time I got through all the begging and pleading, I ended up being forced to take the class that was already on my schedule, that I was like, oh, whatever, I'll get out of this. And it was a class on entrepreneurship. And I did not go to business school intending to be an entrepreneur. I never knew any entrepreneurs. I come from a blue collar family from Michigan. You do not go and start risky things and like put your income and health insurance at risk. And that class changed my life. Like I'm an entrepreneur now. 10, 12 years later, it's one of the reasons why I had the confidence to go and pursue this path. And I realized over the course of that class that all the things that I loved about making theater and art and music were true about building businesses. Finding something that didn't exist in the world, building it with an incredible team, getting it out there whether or not you think you're ready, and getting feedback on it as quick and as early as possible. All of those things were true. And it was just a different way to apply those skills. And I'm really lucky that they didn't let me in that education class.
That's awesome. Your best mistake was turned into your greatest inspiration.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. We'll keep you posted when we get this published.
Awesome.
I can't wait to share it with my daughter.
Give her my best.
I will. I'll connect you to LinkedIn, and I'll connect you with her.
Too.
She's on there once in a while.
Excellent.
Take care.
Bye, Kezan.
Bye-bye.